We're headed down to Orlando, where Chris Mannix is on the eve of the NBA season resuming. Chris, what games are you, or I guess game, are you going to focus on? I'm guessing Clippers-Lakers, or do you have to choose, and/or was that one filled already with media members for purposes of the debut on Thursday?
Well, I'm probably going to be at Clippers-Lakers, but both these openers could be anticlimactic with some of the health issues that these teams are dealing with. I mean, Anthony Davis sat out practice on Tuesday with an eye injury. He was wearing pretty thick glasses from an eye poke I guess he got a couple of days ago. But his status is up in the air. And I was at Pelicans practice last night. Zion Williamson made his return to practice, but he's been off for almost 2 weeks. And there's really no guarantee. In fact, a lot of skepticism that he'll be ready to go on Thursday for their opener. So, I mean, it's the big return of the NBA could fall a little bit flat with some of the players missing.
And Montrezl Harrell is out for the Clippers, right? Do we know what's going on with him?
Well, he is, I believe, and the Clippers have a practice this morning in a couple of hours where we'll learn a little bit more. But I believe he's either en route to the bubble or in the bubble right now. And when he gets here, he'll begin the 4-day quarantine for the excused absence. So he will not play in the opener. And Lou Williams, another guy that will not play in the opener for reasons that we all know of by now. But, there's just going to be a lot of guys missing, from these first two opening night games, which certainly has to be disappointing for the NBA.
So let's go into that Lou Williams story. I mean, that had to be the number one topic inside of the bubble, right? I mean, it was the number one topic outside of the bubble for how ridiculous it was. But, while it ended up being funny, if that picture with the rapper isn't posted, then in theory, Lou Williams would have come back and the NBA would have not known that he had ever gone to the strip club to pick up chicken wings or whatever reason he was there. And as a result, he could have punctured the bubble and exposed everybody. It's a funny story, but it's also kind of a scary one because it shows how one individual decision could have a major impact on the entire season. And we're starting to see that already, or we have seen it with the Marlins. There are a lot of individuals that have to make smart decisions in order for these leagues to be able to play in a healthy manner.
No, there was no sympathy for Lou Williams from anyone that I've talked to in the bubble. I mean, I haven't had a chance to talk to many of his teammates yet, but by and large, it's very much kind of like a head slap kind of thing. And even from what I was told, even union representatives who fought on Lou Williams' behalf so that he could get out with an excused absence to go to the funeral for this close friend or close family member. They were frustrated by Lou's decision to do it. Because even if you take it at face value, and look, the guy's got a chicken wing flavor named after him. I tend to believe he likes the wings there. But even if you take it at face value, it's insane to even put yourself in even a modicum of risk in a situation like that when you could have had any number of people go pick up wings for you. I mean, every player in this bubble, they've only been here about 3 weeks, but I can tell you there are a lot of players, I'd say the vast majority of players, that are already starting to climb the walls a little bit. Every player would love to have one night out just to go grab some wings from their favorite place and hang out. They don't get to do that because they signed up for this. Lou Williams doing that, it's certainly there's nobody that's on Team Lou Williams as far as I can tell inside the bubble.
I didn't realize this, but I was reading one of your articles or one of the other guys who's there. The players aren't even allowed. Like I was thinking, well, they can hang out in each other's rooms and like play video games against each other. No one is allowed entry to your room other than you, right?
Yeah, and it goes even further. Up until this point, teams can't matriculate into other teams' hotels.
Yeah.
So you have 4 hotels are in use, really 3 when it comes to players. And you're basically limited to the hotels that you're in. Now, I do think that's going to change in the next couple of weeks. There's really no need to not allow players to hang out with each other when they're going up against each other during games. It's almost like, why do you have social distancing on the bench when guys are going at each other in practice? There's some things that just don't make a ton of sense. So I think players will have some of those restrictions loosened a little bit. But the no room thing, that's going to be a hard and fast rule, I think, for the foreseeable future. The NBA, doesn't want to Just doesn't think that's an acceptable risk.
We're talking to Chris Mannix at SI. Chris Mannix, he's inside the bubble there in Orlando. Let's go to the start of the season. Obviously, a lot of teams that know they're in the playoffs already, let's say like the Lakers and the Clippers are playing. What's the goal for the teams that already know they're in the playoffs in these 8 games leading in? Is it just to try to get back into shape and avoid getting injured? Because what I would say is the seeding doesn't seem to me like it really matters hardly at all when you don't have home court. I mean, I don't know that there's any advantage bestowed upon the 1 seed as opposed to the 2 or the 3 or anything else. You're going to have to beat these guys regardless. Do the teams that know they're in the playoffs really care at all about these 8 games?
Well, I mean, the short answer is no. I mean, but I think there's a little bit of a layer to it. Like in the first round, if you're an Eastern Conference top 3 team, top 4 team, you want to do everything you can to avoid Philadelphia, right? Because if you avoid Philadelphia, it means you get either Brooklyn or Washington or Orlando, and those are the teams you want in a first-round matchup. It's the difference between maybe having, a 6 or 7 game street fight against a physical Sixers team versus a 4-game maybe cakewalk against somebody else. So you do kind of monitor that, and you want to keep your position if you're in a position to avoid those teams. But by and large, it's an extension. It's being viewed as an extension of training camp. Like you want to ramp these guys up because there have been a lot of soft tissue injuries early on, and that was expected. I mean, teams have been really cautious about ramping these guys up too fast. But if you're Boston and you've got Kemba Walker out there, you don't want to burn him out just to win a couple of seeding games. The same thing can be said for the Clippers, who have myriad players that have been out for a while. The Nuggets just got their full roster in place yesterday when their last player arrived in Orlando. So I think it's going to be a continuation of this exhibition season to get these guys up to that point, ramped up, so that by mid-August, when the first round starts, they're going to be as close to in regular season form as they could be.
All right, so now that's the top end in terms of the guys that already know they're in the playoffs. This is going to be a little bit confusing, I think, to a lot of people out there. And tell me if I've got this right, because I think I do, but I'm not 100% certain. Right now, for the 8th seed, that is the final team that will make the playoffs in the Eastern and Western Conference. If the 8th seed is more than 4 games ahead of everybody else, then there is no play-in games at all, right? Am I correct in that to start with?
Correct with that, yes.
All right, but if they are 3.5 games or closer to the 9 seed, then there will be a play-in between the 8 and the 9 seed to see who is actually going to make the playoffs. If the 9 seed is going to go, then they would have to win 2 games. And if the 8 seed wins one of those games, then they advance. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it's mostly applicable to what happens in the Western Conference.
Right.
I mean, the East, it's almost impossible to. I mean, as bad as Brooklyn is, they're in 7 right now, and it'd be hard for them to lose out to a depleted Washington team. Everybody's kind of watching the Western Conference situation
where there
Memphis,
are 3 teams, 3.5 games back. Am I correct in that?
It's more, it is, but it's more. I mean, I don't know what the status of Zion's going to be for this season. I mean, Alvin Gentry, talking to him last night, he made it clear they're not going to screw around with this year. And like, if Zion's not all the way back, they're not going to risk further injury by burning him out. And like I said, he just got back to practice after 2 weeks off. It's really about Portland to me. It's Portland and Memphis now that are battling. Portland's sitting there with a full complement. Damian Lillard's had that foot problem, but he's going to play on Friday in their opener. And Memphis has been banged up. Justice Winslow is out of the lineup. That's really the showdown everybody's kind of looking for. Can Portland stay within that 4-game window, and can they win 2 off Memphis? I think that's probably the most intriguing part of the end of the season.
Do they play Memphis and Portland in this final stretch?
Yeah, they do, and I think it's early. I'm not sure what game it is, but they do play at some point.
That's obviously a huge swing game in terms of if Memphis could win that one, that gives them a very good chance to keep Portland at bay. But if Portland wins, it gives them a good chance to get into that playoff scenario.
Yeah, and it's everything for Portland, and that's a team that the Lakers have made it clear they don't want to play Portland in the first round. I mean, Danny Green flat out came out and said it, and I've heard it from a number of different players and coaches privately. within that organization. I mean, you don't want to go into a first-round matchup against a team with elite guards when your backcourt has been depleted. Like, J.R. Smith had a great game in the last exhibition game, but if you're rolling J.R. Smith out there for 20, 25 minutes a night, you've got big problems. Like, you just do. Like, it's got to be Caruso, Danny Green, and that group. And if you're going up against Lillard and McCollum, plus a front court that's all the way back from injury, I mean, that's you contrast it with what's going on in the East, where whoever the Bucks play is just going to be, I mean, it's like playing a wide team basically from Milwaukee. And the Lakers, if they have to go up against the Blazers, it might be a 6 or 7 game series that could have ramifications even if they win for the rest of the playoffs.
Where would the Blazers in your mind have ended up if they had been healthy throughout the whole season?
Probably in the middle of the pack, competing possibly for the 3 seed at that point. I think they're that good to be in that position.
All right, so we keep asking you this, but now that you've been able to see some of these teams practice and as the season is poised to begin tomorrow, what do you think we know the Lakers, the Clippers, and certainly the Bucks are favorites to either advance to the finals or win the title. What other teams do you think have a chance to make a run, and how prohibitive of a favorite should we consider the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Bucks?
I don't think – well, let me put it this way. There's 2 answers to that. One, I think we should consider the Bucks a huge favorite at this point because Milwaukee – I spend most of my day, Clay, sitting in the hotel lobby where all the practices take place. I don't really see any need to go over too many scrimmages. They're kind of pointless. But sitting in the lobbies where all these guys roll through. And, you'd spend a lot of time talking to coaches and different staffers and players. And most of the people I talk to keep bringing up Milwaukee and how the Bucks have picked up right where they left off. And one of the reasons for that is it's twofold. One, the Bucks have not been bit by the COVID-19 bug. They've basically been healthy throughout the course of this restart, dating back to when they were in the bubble, in their own bubble, in their own at their own practice facility to where they are now. Yeah, Pat Connaughton was afflicted by it, but the large part of the rotation was healthy, so they had that going for them. And the Bucks, the front office guys have told me, like, from day one, the Bucks players have wanted to be here, and that's not the same for most of these teams for various reasons. Players may not have wanted to be here. Most of the Bucks wanted to be here. They wanted to, continue what they started and had that kind of mindset about this moving forward. I think the mental part of all this is going to be a huge variable in the success of teams this season. If you are focused mentally and you can deal with all that's going on kind of around you and the monotony of being down here away from friends and family, I think you can have an advantage. And the Bucks have had that. They've had that all throughout this process. Now, on the flip side of it, if I'm looking at a first-round upset, I don't know who the Clippers might play, but that's a team I might bet against at this point because they have had the opposite of that. Like, they have had a complete lack of continuity. Yes, they've had Kawhi and Paul George, and having your stars obviously matters, but, key players, whether it's Montrezl Harrell, Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, have been in and out of the bubble for various reasons. They've dealt with the COVID bug for a few different players. I mean, Zubac, their starting center, just got back into the rotation or into the bubble into practice just now. That's a team I'd be really concerned about. I mean, they clearly operate like a team that believes they can flip the proverbial switch and get going. But I have my questions in this environment. I think if you're locked in and if you have all your guys and you have continuity, that's going to be a huge advantage for you going into the playoffs. And other teams have that. Oklahoma City has that. That's a team they might face in the first round. The Clippers, they do not. So that to me is a team that I have some red flags about early on.
What are the players going to do for the national anthem and/or before the games tomorrow? Any suggestion, any indication?
I think there'll be – I believe some will kneel. And I'm not saying some players. I believe full teams will kneel. I don't have direct – I mean, I've heard this from, whether beginning with the Utah – and New Orleans game. There's been some reporting on ESPN about it, I believe, and I'd heard this at practice yesterday, but I believe there's some kind of momentum towards kneeling during the national anthem.
For every game throughout the rest of their season?
I don't believe they'll do it for every game. And at this point, it's more speculation. I think that this could be just for the restart. I mean, this is the most eyeballs that's going to be on the NBA until the playoffs, maybe even during the playoffs. It'll be a massive television audience for this event. So I think these players whether it's kneeling and wearing something on their shirt, whether it's a Black Lives Matter T-shirt or something. I think there will be something that happens during the national anthem for this game. And then, if I had to guess, moving forward, it's probably more of standing and a traditional anthem.
What for people who haven't watched, and I haven't watched a ton of these preseason games, or whatever you want to call them, that have been out there, what is it going to look like on television for the viewer who's going to be watching tomorrow?
It'll honestly look like you're playing a really advanced video game, like PlayStation 5. It just, with the LED lights and the screens in the background and the camera angles that they're using. I mean, most of the cameras they're using for this are all robotic. There's only one actual cameraman that's in the building for each game. It'll look like a video game out there. I mean, the sounds will be a little bit weird. I think and players think that the virtual fans are weird too. I mean, that's just like a kind of something that may die at some point with the NBA as they move this thing forward. But I think just by and large, you look like you're playing, NBA 2K on the most, high def screen you could possibly imagine.
Chris, we'll be watching. Appreciate it. Talk to you next week, my man.
You got it, Clay.
That's Chris Mannix at SI Chris Mannix. You can find him there.